Um, if you're trying to solve a two-step equation, 2 steps, right? There's the variable here. There's a variable. There's 2 operations done to it. You have to undo 2 operations. Okay? You have to undo them in the reverse order that they were done. If I was, I want to use the analogy of here's my classroom. Here's the door on the outside. Here's the doorknob on the outside. Okay, and you're showing up at the when you get to school in the morning. When I get to school, you got to come here. You have to open the door. Actually, you have to do it. You have to unlock the door, right? Unlock the door. Open the door. And enter, right? That's how you do that's the steps you go in this order when I get here to school, right? Unlock the door, open it, and come in. When I'm leaving at the end of the day, you got to undo those things. What order do I have to undo them in? I gotta go out the door first, right? Now, just think about it, right? The first one I have to undo is the last one that was done. Right? The first one I have to undo is the last one that's done. What's the next one I have to undo? So I have to exit. I have to close the door. And then lock it, right? You have to do the opposite operations, the inverse. These 3 things are the inverses of these 3 things, but in the reverse order, right? So when we're undoing these things, we have to undo them in the reverse order. If you knew what this was here, this x, you'd first times it by 15 and then add 23. So when you undo those things, you got to undo them in the reverse order. The order you do those in is you would times 15 and then you'd add 23. So to undo those, what order do we have to undo those things in? What do we have to do first? What's the first thing you have to do? You have to undo this one first because it was the last thing that was done. Oh, I see what you're saying. It's 23. What's the first thing you need to undo? So you got to subtract 23, right? That's why the way we're going to do it is, I really would like it either if you nicely line up your equal signs, or if it helps, put a line down there. I think it does help to put a line down there. And you can say, I'm going to minus 23, minus 23. Remember that we were thinking about these things as like blocks and balloons, right? This is a positive thing, that's a positive thing. This, if you want to get rid of that positive 23, you got to put a negative 23 because those cancel out, right? What do I have left on the right side? This is the right side. What do I have left? On the right side, what do I have?
15x.
15x. Put the equal sign nicely in the line. What do I have left on the left side? Negative 105, right? Remember, you do something to both sides and then you write the result, right? Here was the starting, then you did something to both sides and then you have a result, and then we got to do something else to both sides. What are we going to do to both sides now? We undid the adding 23. How do I undo that 15?
Make 105.
Well, let's first of all just say, what do I do to both sides? What do I do to undo the timesing by 15? Dividing by 15. Divide by 15, right? Why do you divide by 15 on the side? What does it do to that times 15? Cancels it out, right? They cancel each other out. If you wanted to make a big mess of your work, you could say these cancel each other out and I'm going to cross them both out. I don't think it's a good idea to cross them out. You can cross them out in your mind, but it just makes a mess of your work. But that's why you're doing it. So you do that to both sides. And then you end up with, what do you end up with? On the right side, this is the right side, what do you end up with? Just x. There's an equal sign because it's still an equation. What do you have on the left side? Negative something. Negative 7? Because you're dividing, right? Don't forget you're dividing. Divide by 15? I think it's -7, isn't it? That's your answer there you can put. In your mind, think about it again like this. You have something to start with. You perform one operation to both sides. You get a result. You do something else to both sides. You get a result, and that's the final result. Why were these called two-step equations again? You see here, two-step equations. 2 steps, right? You got to do 2 things. Here's one thing to do, here's another thing to do. You got to do 2 things to get the variable by itself. This is called isolating the variable because the variable is all by itself on the right-hand side and a number on the left-hand side. Here the variable's not isolated. It's with a bunch of other stuff. Okay, can we do this one together here? Actually, I'll pause this. Make sure as you do this one, number one, it helps you think about what to do first if you put the line there, because you're working from the side that has the x. This side has the x, so the number you're going to undo is one of those numbers, not the 17, right? First you have to undo this thing. Take away 40. You have to think, how do I undo subtracting 40? You think about it and try and write something. And then write down what the result is after that. You should copy it down if you haven't written anything. This page right here. First thing you need to undo. You need to add 40 to both sides. If you add 40 to both sides again, I don't recommend that you scribble all over it, but the reason you're doing this is because it cancels this out. Those 2 things cancel each other out. Does that make sense? Do you want to see me cross it out again? That cancels that out. What do you have left after I cross that out on the left-hand side? What do you have? Well, that's 0, but what else is left in addition to 0? Yeah, -19x. What about the other side? 57. Guys? Remember we started with this. You did something to both sides. That's your result. We got to do something else to both sides and then we're going to get a result. You really have to kind of get a hold of how to do this. You divide both sides by -19. The best way to show division is to just put a line and do that. Okay? Can you guys write this? Some of you, again, you don't have anything to look back on if you don't write anything down, especially if you didn't do it yourself, right? What's the result when you do that? What do you have on the left side? This side right here. Well, you're just left with if you divide it by that, you have that, right? You just have an x. What do you have left on the right side? -3. Awesome. That's your answer. Your 2-step equations are going to have a couple things you do each time. All right? Yes, you do. Yes, you do. More or less, yes. Can you try if you have not already done so? Guys, I realize some of you are ahead of this. If you have not done the show you know right now, these questions right here, do these questions right now in a nice orderly fashion with the steps working down the page. Do something to both sides, get a result. Do something to both sides, get the final answer. I will put the solutions up in about 10 or 15 minutes. 10 minutes probably. Once you are done with that, you notice this puzzle here is sideways. Do you notice that there's not that much space in between here? You know how there's not that much space in here? This space right here, not that much space. This is why I put on here, what did I put on here? What does this say up here? You got to turn your head maybe. Use separate paper, show steps clearly. This will be something that gets handed in, okay? Use separate paper. This has to get done, this puzzle, okay? All the steps have to be there nicely the way you've learned to do. Okay? You guys have 45 minutes. You have to get, at the very least, I know some of you are way ahead of this, which is fine, but as a minimum, you have to get that show you know with those 4 questions. This and that puzzle done. Not just by writing, scribbling answers on here. Please don't, you're going to end up staying after school if all this says here is, if it says this is, n equals whatever here, right? If you have that, you're going to end up staying after school and doing it. That has to get done as a very minimum before you go. Can you get to work on it? I'm here to answer questions, but you got to work pretty efficiently, okay?